What's up, YouTube? TCM here, back with another video. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about building a winning team culture. And this is actually a keynote talk that I gave at both Wild West Hacking Fest and at B-Sides Greenville. It's a little bit condensed. I removed some slides from the talk because they were relevant to the conference at hand, but the talk overall is there and is shortened a little bit just for YouTube. The overall message is there, and the message is about how you as an individual can be a better manager, better teammate, and honestly what you should expect from an employer. Are you being treated right? Are you being paid what you're worth? Those sorts of things. So sit back. You don't have to watch the video if you don't want. You could just put it on another tab if you'd like. Otherwise, I encourage you to watch it. I'm going to disappear from the screen now. It's going to be a little bit of death by PowerPoint, but hopefully you find something valuable in this keynote. And let's go ahead, not waste any more time, and get right into it. All right, as mentioned, this talk is called Building a Winning Team Culture. My name is Heath Adams, and I am the CEO of TCM Security. I'm also the co-founder of Breachpoint. One is offensive related, one is defensive related. I'm a former accountant, which you're going to hear me talk about in a later story today. And you're also going to learn a little bit more about me and my background and my journey into information security and eventually penetration testing. So I'm a hacker by trade, eventually became a business owner. And here are all the social media sites and sites that I run if you're interested in following me on social media or if you're interested in checking any of these sites out. So why this talk? Well, this talk was built to raise awareness because team culture in this modern era, especially an era where we work remotely, can be incredibly difficult. So we want to ask some questions. How can we be a better teammate? How can we be a better manager? Ultimately, what can you do as an employee? And what do you deserve as an employee? So what do you deserve from your team? What do you deserve from your managers or your company? And we have gained a lot of this experience through running a company over the past few years. And most of this experience has been made through mistakes. And you'll hear me talk about the mistakes that I've made and I thought would work, but really didn't work. And hopefully by the end of this talk, this is going to inspire some action for you. You should be able to say, yeah, I'm being treated right. No, I'm not being treated right. Or, hey, I'm being a great teammate, or maybe I'm not being the best teammate. And what can you do to improve? So hopefully you get some action out of this talk. So some quick insight to TCM Security. This is the chart of employees and a little bit of our growth. As you can see, we've pretty much doubled year to year. And hopefully we don't double in 2024 because it has been just madness with all the employees running around as it is. I don't know if I can handle another double as a manager, but for now, we are sitting at 22 employees in 2023 at the time of this talk. We'll probably hire a couple more before the end of the year, and we will stop there. We'll see how 2024 goes. But the weird thing or the cool thing about TCM Security is we've never had any turnover. Nobody's ever just voluntarily quit the company. And there's something to say about that, and there's something interesting about that. And I think that we're doing a lot of things well, and that is translating directly into employees staying with us. So in this talk, we're going to talk about a bunch of different concepts that we hold and values that we hold as TCM Security, as the employer. And the first concept is this concept of people over profits. If you follow us on social media, or if you follow me anywhere on social media, you'll probably hear me say this. And these concepts that you're going to see, by the way, not just this concept, most of the concepts that you're going to see are built around what I disliked with former employers. So if it was something that a former employer did and that I felt wasn't great, I said, hey, if I ever become a manager or a business owner, I'm going to change this. And so you're going to see some of these concepts as we go. But the idea of people over profits is that your team is most important. Your clients are also important. They're more important than the dollar sign. They're more important than the bottom line. And what we found out is that if you treat your team right and your people right, well, your profits actually increase. And so if you stop focusing on the bottom line and start focusing on your people, you actually are more profitable at the end of the day on your bottom line. And investing in your people is what pays the most dividends. When we talk about investing in your people, we talk about paying them competitive salaries, having a good work-life balance, having good training budgets, and being able to share the wealth and drive innovation. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in this talk as well. So let's talk about competitive salaries first. And let's back up a little bit and talk about my story as working in the help desk. And I don't know why I chose this photo, but this was the only photo I have of me. And I don't know why I'm bald in this picture, by the way. But this photo of me is me just getting out of work, working at the help desk. And I wanted to have a picture of me working in the help desk. For some reason I couldn't find it, but this is a good example of the work that I was doing though. because I would get off of my help desk job and I would go immediately start driving for Uber. I would turn the app on as soon as I got off of work, and I would start working until I had no more rides available to me. So I would work basically all day. I would get off of work and I'd go work again because I wanted to earn as much as I could, and I wanted to just work as hard as I could because I knew for me that at the end of the day, help desk wasn't going to be the end all be all. It was just kind of the lily pad into the next journey. And I needed to make a little bit extra money on the side as well. The picture to the right of that is all the certifications that I earned along the way in my help desk job. Now, I was a help desk employee for a little over a year, and the story goes into that journey. So I had all these certifications. I was working 2 jobs essentially. I was making around $50,000 a year, and I knew that I was underpaid based on the credentials. I went out and I did a lot of research. I went to salary.com, I went to Glassdoor, I talked to people, and I just said, hey, what should I be making? And the number that I came up with my 1 year of experience, the certifications that I earned, all that was around $55,000 a year. So that was a 10% or so increase that I was asking for. I realized that was a long shot. I had an annual review at my 1 year mark, and I went into that annual review wanting to ask for $55,000 a year, and I did. And what they said to me in return was, no, we're going to give you $51,000 a year. So I got a 2% increase in raise. I was looking for 10%. I probably honestly would have been happy with 5%, somewhere in between 52.5, anything along those lines. But what I realized at that point was I know that I'm worth at least more than $51,000. I think I'm worth at least $55,000. I think I'm going to go out there and I'm going to test the market. So I went out there and I tested the market, and I found a network security job paying me $80,000 a year. So immediately I left that job. I thought my worth was $55,000 a year. In reality, I was underselling myself. My worth was actually $80,000 a year, which brings me into the concept of competitive salaries and knowing your worth. So if you're an employee right now, know your worth. Go do your research. Look at Glassdoor, look at salary.com. More importantly, go talk to people. Talk to people that are currently working in your job, in your field. Talk to people that are maybe working in some roles that you want to be in. Talk to people that worked at the job before. All is fair game. Talk to them and say, hey, what are you making? If you don't mind telling me, what salary should I be expecting for this position? A lot of people are out there and they are underpaid because they do not know their worth. Now, I have this graphic here, by the way, that employees who stay in companies longer than 2 years get paid 50% less. This is a Forbes article. They did a bunch of research on it. It's very, very interesting. And we see this particularly in IT, where people will leave after 6 months or a year because they can just keep getting better and better salaries. Eventually, that runs out. But for a lot of people, you can keep increasing your salary by just leaving your job every year. And so for an employer, you should be paying your people. You should be paying those increases, and you shouldn't just be looking at it from a 3% increase metric, because what's going to happen is people are going to leave. And in reality, the cost of retraining somebody is so much higher than just retaining somebody. You should be looking to retain your employees, because if you retain them, you don't have to retrain somebody new. It takes months to get somebody spun up to the point of where your old employee was, and it just ends up not being worth the time, effort, and energy for the most part in order to do that. So you should just be paying your people. If you don't pay your people, the people are going to leave and you're going to have to retrain. It's just going to be an endless process, which a lot of companies to date don't understand. So if you're an employee, make sure you know your worth. Go out there, do your research. If you're an employer, pay your people or they will leave. Now, this next concept of work-life balance is also very important. And one thing that I can remember very dearly to me is when I was an accountant. So we'll talk about accountant Heath. I used to be an accountant, and I was making $40,000 a year at one point. And if you don't know about accountants and work-life balance, we work a lot of hours. Accountants work a lot of hours. Now, I was in public accounting especially. So accounting in the United States, we have quarters. Quarter one is very busy because tax filing season is in April. So we are working 60 to 80-hour weeks, and it quickly takes its toll on you. And I eventually took a job for $55,000 a year because I was chasing salary. Absolutely. But the downside to this job was that I needed to actually move to the middle of nowhere to take the job. And I remember I ended up finding this job and the place that I was going to live based on where there was a Walmart. What town had a Walmart nearby? Because I knew that town at least had some grocery shopping and some minor things to do. So the town that I found was 45 minutes away from my job still. That's how in the middle of nowhere this job was. So what I ended up doing was I ended up going to work, and I would drive to work when it was dark out, and I would get home when it was dark out, and I had no work-life balance. I was so burnt out. I never saw the sun. And I remember I also had the manager from hell. There was one situation in my mind that flipped the switch that I knew I was going to quit. It was 4:59. Checkout time is 5 o'clock, and I was going to leave at 4:59. My manager stopped me and said, "Where are you going? It is not 5 o'clock." She was a micromanager. She was very much by the clock, and it was very much a situation where if I had my work done for the day, I felt like it didn't really matter if I was leaving a minute early, 1 minute early, you know? And so I had this idea of, hey, I'm going to quit this job. And I did. I ended up just getting fed up at work one day. I took my badge, my company card, all that stuff. I left it on my desk. I walked out for lunch and I actually never came back. And I was never as happier at that moment than quitting a job before. Like that was the best quitting experience for me. And I felt so much relief instantly because I knew that that work-life balance that I had, which was none, was gone. And so I thought to myself, if I ever became an employer or if I ever went to work for somebody else even, that I was going to work for somebody else that valued my time. And when I did become an employer, I thought of all these ideas and things that I was going to do to change the work-life balance and make sure that we had good work-life balance at work. And so one of those things was, hey, we're going to have unlimited PTO. We're going to have flexible work schedules. So we have core hours where people have to be here. So for example, if core hours are 10 p.m. or 10 a.m., I should say, to 2 p.m., great. If you want to work 2 to 6 to make up your extra 8 hours, that's fine. Or if you want to work some time elsewhere, or if you want to work earlier, like 8 to 10 or 6 to 10, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter as long as you're putting in your core hours. Another thing is if me as an employer is giving time to the employee or saying, hey, here's 40 hours of work in that week and it took you 30 hours to finish, then that's fine. You worked 30 hours, you got all the work that I asked you to get done, and that is on me to not assign you or to have assigned you not enough work. So with that, we came up with this idea and we started implementing it, and we said, okay, let's do the unlimited PTO thing. What I found out was the unlimited PTO thing really didn't work out. And PTO, especially unlimited PTO, can be predatory in the sense that an employer can use that against you. They could say, yeah, you've got unlimited, but then they don't ever let you schedule time off. Or they could say, yeah, you've got unlimited, but what really happens is, well, you don't bank any PTO hours. So there's no incentive or benefit for you if you were to quit the company or leave the company. It's just going away magically. And what we actually found out was, hey, we're not being malicious with this. We have no intent of being malicious with this. But another thing that we didn't expect was unlimited PTO not working out because people didn't take time off. Nobody was taking time off. People were getting burnt out. And what we realized was there was no incentive to really take time off. When we moved to this PTO plan and we changed our PTO plan to be 4 weeks minimum PTO plus a week of sick, if you're with us for 5 years or more, you get 6 weeks of PTO plus a week of sick. What we found out with that is people actually do take PTO more because they have this balance that will then expire if it maximizes. So we have a max cap, there is some rollover, all that stuff. But eventually, if you're not taking your PTO, you're then just accruing nothing. And that is a negative incentive. So we incentivize our employees to actually take PTO. And it doesn't work all the time. We still have employees that we need to say, hey, you really need to go out there and take this PTO. And sometimes it's quote unquote forced a little bit to say, hey, take some time off. And recognizing this as an employer is important as well. Recognizing your employers that are burnt out or your employees that are burnt out and giving them time off, very, very important. So for employees, knowing that work-life balance is important and knowing that you do not have to dedicate your life to a job is very, very important to you and your mental health and your family and everybody else. So find jobs that have good work-life balance. Make sure you're actually interrogating your employers and you're asking questions during interviews about work-life balance because that is important. For employers, there's a lot of research out there. First of all, there's research that says, hey, employers could not tell when actually an employee worked 80 hours or if they were just faking working 80 hours. There's actually some research that's out there too from production and factory world where they actually found that production increased when hours were decreased. When you worked more hours, you made more mistakes. Production actually was less efficient than those that were working less hours. So having a work-life balance for your employees is very important. And also, benefit packages are improving, work-life balance is improving. If you're not keeping up with the other employers that are out there, you're going to lose your talent. Let's talk about now this concept of sharing the wealth, which actually is how TCM Security was founded. I was working as a pen tester for a company, and I was also doing YouTube. I didn't have a very big YouTube channel at the time, but I was getting some traction within the company because of my YouTube channel. There were companies coming to the company I was working for and saying, hey, we saw Heath on YouTube. We actually want to work with you because of that, and we want Heath to do our pen test for us. That's awesome. That's fine. I'm referring business into the company. However, when it came time to reward me for any of those referrals, I got a whole $0. And it comes down to the concept of, well, 100% of nothing is worse than 90% of something. And this company was saying, no, 100% of something is better than 90% of something. And so I wasn't getting incentivized. And when I'm not getting incentivized, the light bulb went off and said, well, if they're making money off of me, I could probably make money off of me as well. So I went out there and I started TCM Security, and guess what? All the people from YouTube started following over there and started wanting pen tests, and then I was getting 100% of something when I gladly actually would have accepted 10% of something from my other employer. And so this comes down to the concept of we should be rewarding innovation. We should be rewarding referrals. And what we do at TCM Security is anybody that signs a contract with us to come work for us, they have it in writing that 10% of anything that you refer to us is yours. So somebody refers a $10,000 pen test. Well, guess what? They get $1,000 of that. Easy, straightforward. We expect you to make money if you are making us money. And we brought this idea to even a bigger concept. We have an employee named Zach Hill, and we decided early on that we were going to create this program. Actually, in Zach's interview, Zach said, I have this idea for a program that I really want to create. This program eventually became what's called the PCRP program. And that program is a career-ready professional. What we are doing is we are taking the individual, we are putting them through soft skills training, we are putting them through mock interviews, through one-on-one coaching, all this stuff, and we're not charging them boot camp prices, because we can charge the price to the employer that eventually hires them. We do all the vetting, we're doing recruiting on steroids, and we're saying we've interviewed this person, we know their technical ability, we know all these things, we can present them to an employer, and then we can charge the employer a recruiting fee. So we don't actually make money off the student, we make money off the employer, which is what the goal was. And this is a fantastic idea, completely Zach's idea, and we got together, eventually we were able to hammer down the fine details, launch the program, all that fun stuff, and it just took off. It did incredibly well. And because it did so well, we made a good chunk of money off of this. Now, again, this wasn't something that we're necessarily profiting off of, but we are making revenue off of. And because this revenue is being brought in, we should be rewarding the person who was innovative and brought this concept to us. Because of that, we gave Zach 10% of the revenues. Because again, this wasn't our idea, it was Zach's idea. And we wouldn't have made this money if Zach didn't bring this idea to us. Again, 90% of something is better than 100% of nothing. And Zach, being the nice person that he is, took 50% of his reward and he went and distributed it to his team, which I thought was an incredible gesture. Now, this has also led to some concepts that have not worked out for us. One thing that I can think of very specifically is we came up with this idea of rewarding referrals and incentivizing referrals to maybe drive in a little bit more on the referral side. So what we came up with was a $10,000 quarterly bonus for the person that referred the most in revenue for that quarter, provided they referred at least $10,000 in revenue. So let me break that down for you. If we had a $10,000 referral from an employee, they would automatically get their 10% or $1,000. And if that $10,000 referral was also the top referral for the quarter, well, then they would also make $10,000 off of that. So they would make $11,000, we would bring in 10, and we'd actually lose money on the deal, because I believe that is on us as the employer to actually retain that contract and bring it in annually year over year. Now, what has happened is nobody has actually gotten that reward. Nobody has crossed that $10,000 threshold. And that is because we have failed as a company to actually work through the incentive. The incentive can be there and you can make the incentive whatever you want. We could have made it $25,000. It still wouldn't have done anything. The reason being is people do not know how to sell pen tests. We got feedback from our employees. Why isn't this working? We don't know how to sell it. Okay, so then we need to actually be able to train people, because the only people that probably know how to sell pen tests would be our salespeople and the people that work on the pen test team. On the other silos of the company, they don't really know what pen testing is. How are they going to go out there and sell this to somebody if they don't even know what it is to sell? So with that concept, we realized that, well, one, we need to train our employees if we expect them to actually get these rewards. And two, we need to make our employees more aware of the other silos in the company and what they're doing. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But all these stories break down to a couple of ideas. For employees, if you are providing new revenue, regardless of how it is, you should be expecting some sort of reward, even if it is 10%, even if it's 5%, something, right? The company should be giving you something for bringing in money that they otherwise would not have. Now, for employers, again, 90% of something is better than 100% of nothing. And if you're not rewarding innovation, you are actually going to be slowing your innovation. All right, so this brings us into concept number 2, which is that everyone is different. Now, scaling is difficult. If you saw the graph in the beginning, you saw that we have basically, again, doubled every single year, which means that managing 6 people was a little bit easier than managing 12, which is a little bit easier than managing 22 that we're at now, and so forth. And my management style is very, very hands-off. It is very opposite of a micromanager. And this comes down a lot to the experiences that I had with micromanagers, especially when I was an accountant, and saying, yeah, I'm never going to be this way. And the problem is some people want to be micromanaged. Not everybody wants that hands-off experience. Some people want you to tell them specifically, what is it that you need me to do this week? My style is to say, hey, take this high-end idea and just go with it. Here's a high-level idea, go with it. Well, some people can't do that, and that's okay. But understanding that is very difficult from a management perspective, and that's one of the places that I failed at, especially early on. Now, that led to this idea of understanding our team better. And we are familiar with the one-on-one concept, where a one-on-one is an employer talking with their employees, and they say, well, here's what you did well, here's what you didn't do well, here's how you can do better. But what about a one-on-one for employers and understanding your employees a little bit better? And that's what we did. And we came up with these bullets here, these questions. And this is all the one-on-one was. We said, hey, very interview-like question, but where do you want to be in a year? Where do you want to be in 5 years? The reason being is we want to know where the employee wants to end up ultimately. You would actually be surprised to find out that a lot of employees do not want to be on the same team that they are in within a year or 5 years. Maybe they want to be on a different team, a different silo. They want to be doing something else. Maybe they want to be in management, whatever it might be. You should find out the goals. We have employees on our team right now that want to be in positions that we don't even offer as a company. And that's okay. I realize that some employees are eventually going to leave. And that's fine. How do I get you there? How do I make you as successful as possible? Again, employees are more than a number. At the end of the day, your employees are people. How can we help them succeed, regardless if it's with us as the company? Of course, we want to retain everybody. But what I tell all of my employees is if there is somewhere that you are ultimately going to be happier and we can get you there, I'll be the first person to write your recommendation letter to get you there. And so what does it look like? We have an employee that started out on our help desk team. And when she started with us, she said immediately, I know I want to be a pen tester. Perfect. Okay, well, how do we get you to be a pen tester? Well, we probably need to do some cross training. You probably need to finish some individual training, maybe get some certifications, those sorts of things. And if there's room on the pen test team when time comes, awesome. If there's not, again, we'll write you that recommendation letter to get you where you want to be. And I'm proud to say that she's going to be joining our pen test team in January. And it's because of that open dialogue and that open expectations that she's not disgruntled sitting on the help desk team and she's just waiting for that opportunity. No, we're proactive and we're trying to help her get to where she wanted to be, regardless if that's with us. Now, the other thing that we ask is, hey, what motivates you? What is the ultimate motivation? Why are you working this job right now? Is it money? Is it that you are motivated and you want to drive a Lamborghini someday? Is it that ultimately you just want to be happy and you want to have a home and a family and all those other things? Okay, well, if you want to drive a Lamborghini and you want lots of money, that's cool. How are you going to do that? Probably through innovation. And if you want to do that, you want to make some extra money above and beyond what your job's doing, you probably need to be innovative with us. If you want to be happy and content, you just want to have that house, whatever. What does that house look like? Is it $1 million house? Is it a $200,000 house? What kind of house is it? What do we do to motivate you to make you happy? Maybe it's just work-life balance. Maybe it's certain things. You need to find out what motivates the individuals so that way you know how to utilize them best in the work field. Now, another very, very important question is, what is your work love language? Some people just like praise, and you're going to see that come up here very soon, but some people like praise. Hey, you're doing a great job. Just want to let you know that I'm recognizing you and seeing you, and a lot of people are not praised enough for the work that they do. Some people like small gifts or acts of kindness. That could be like a $5 Starbucks gift card. It's not much, and it goes a long way. Figure out what a work love language is for the individual, and everybody's work love language is a little bit different. See how it goes and see what it is that could make them just a little bit happier with you as their employer. Now, that preferred management style comes down to scaling is difficult. Do people want to be micromanaged? That's okay. If they want to be micromanaged, going in ahead of time and knowing that they want to be is very important. So that way you could set your management style to micromanage them. Or maybe they want that hands-off experience or something in between. You need to figure out what management style works best for that individual so that way you can work with them and make sure that they are as successful as possible under your management. And lastly, what can I do to make your experience here better? Again, this is a one-on-one for you, the employer. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Where can we improve? Asking that question is very important. Now, culture is also very important. You want to have like-minded people around, but you do not want a room full of yes people. We, for example, go out, you don't see a lot of job postings from TCM Security. And the reason is we look at the community first. We look at our Discord, we look at LinkedIn, we look at people that are constantly giving back to the community with expecting little in return. That is our value. That is one of our core values, is the people that give back, the people that aren't in it for something else. And we want those kind of people around. But we don't want them to all be yes people. We want people to challenge us. I want people to look at me when we're in a meeting and say, that is a terrible idea that you're proposing right now. And I want them to not be afraid to do so. So you want a room full of people that are like-minded, that believe in the mission, that believe in the culture, but you do not want a room full of yes people because that could be detrimental. Now, for employees, you should be finding a team that fits your values and culture. A good way to do this, and where I see a lot of people fail in interviews, is to actually interview your future employers. What I mean by I see a lot of people fail is we'll be in interviews and we get to the part where we say, do you have any questions for us? And people are just like, no, I don't have any questions. That's not a good thing. You should have questions for your future employers. Interview them like they interview you. Find out what the culture's like. Find out what happened to the last person. What's the training like? What's the travel like? What's the work-life balance like? Ask those sorts of questions, because otherwise you're not going to have opportunities to identify red flags with future employers. You want to have those. Now, for employers, a bad apple can destroy your entire team's culture. There's a very specific company that I know of where one person was hired, brought in to be a management or higher level, and they drove everybody out of the company. Everybody that was of value left that company. And then guess what? They also left the company. A very, very good company was destroyed by one single individual because that individual did not have the same culture views as the rest. So you do want like-minded people. You do want people to believe in your culture, but again, you do not want that room full of yes people. You can build culture questions into your interview process, especially what's important to you. For example, for TCM, we prefer people that are community-oriented, that love giving back, that have value in teaching and training others. And we love to see that when we are interviewing somebody. Now, concept 3 is this idea of complete transparency. And this starts off with the story of the mythical bonus. And I'm sure a lot of us have had this before, where we're promised this end of year bonus. As long as we meet our metrics, as long as we meet our utilization, as long as our team is profitable, as long as we hit all these goals. And then we work our asses off, we hit these goals, and then guess what? We still don't get the bonus. Well, that sucks. Why? Why did that happen? You'll never really figure it out because there's not transparency there. So they make you work hard and they tell you you're going to get rewarded, and then you don't get rewarded. So our concept and our idea that stems from this, having experienced this myself way too many times, is the idea of complete transparency, the idea of open books. And you see an example here. Yes, some of it's blurred out, but this exactly tells people what is going on with the company at any time. We opened our financials up, and weekly we post our financials to say, here's where our revenues are, here's where our expenses are, here's where our profits are, what is driving these profits, what is causing these expenses, et cetera, et cetera. And this idea is twofold. One, it gets rid of the idea of the mythical bonus. If you know exactly where we're at any given time, it helps you realize, okay, well, maybe we're close to a bonus threshold. Maybe I told you we need to make $1 million and we're at $900,000 with 15 days left to go in the quarter. Okay, well, maybe then we go and we push really hard to get that last $100,000 so that we all get a bonus. We know that it's tied to these metrics. We can see these metrics at any given time and know where we're at. We also know now what every other person in the company is up to, because these revenues and everything that are shared here, we can say, well, here's what the pen test team is doing revenue-wise. Here's what the development team is doing revenue-wise, and so forth. So we know how other silos are actually working and integrating, and how now that you just used to be one cog in the system, but you realize that that cog is very important to making other cogs work and the whole system operate. So it removes that I just work in my little independent silo and I just do my own thing. You actually realize that there are other people in the company doing other things, and how your silo helps their silo, and it actually all works together to make one organization. And so this idea of complete transparency for an employee, you should expect transparency, though you probably shouldn't expect the full transparency that we give. It's highly unlikely that most companies are doing this. But you shouldn't be in the dark. We shouldn't have that wait till the end of the year, all hands meeting to say, oh, well, you actually didn't get your bonus, so sorry. For employers, you should be as transparent as possible. And if you are constantly providing people with false hope and actually just pulling the tablecloth from underneath them, then guess what? They are going to leave if you continuously do that. Now, these next few slides are going to be talking about being a better you in certain situations, such as the workplace, in the community, and other things. Now, we talked about collaboration and we talked about working remote. A lot of us work remote, and it can be very difficult to collaborate remotely. And you're going to see a lot of our tech stack in here, so please don't try to hack us with this tech stack knowledge now. But we do use collaboration tools like Slack. We use collaboration tools like ClickUp, and they work wonders. This is just an example of the collaboration tools that we did just from this month. Now, this is October. It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. We have release dates for blogs that we wanted to put out. Everybody in the company that was part of this was assigned this blog. Hey, we each had our own blog. We can go in here and say, okay, I wrote the blog. It's done. I closed this task out. And anybody who's working on this project together across teams, not all of this was done through just the pen test team, for example. The marketing team was involved. Other teams were involved. Well, they know at any given time where somebody else is at in this process. You don't have to go message them. You don't have to go ask somebody else. It's all right here. And that is a powerful collaboration tool, along with the ability to instantly communicate through something like Slack. Okay, so having collaboration tools are very important. Effective communication and honestly over communication is very important, especially if you're going to be remote. You want to be available at certain times. You want to make sure that you are there. That's why we say we have these core hours. We know when people are going to be at work. If you're going to be working 8 to 5, you should probably be working 8 to 5 every single day, with some exceptions. Okay, if you're going to flex hours, that's fine, but maybe make your team aware of the hours that you're flexing, or make other people know. But if you're there during those core hours, they know that even if you're not there necessarily 8 to 5, you're going to be there 10 to 2, and you might make up those hours somewhere else. Completely fine. You should be documenting things as well. Documentation is so important. What happens if you get hit by a bus? Hopefully it doesn't. But if you do and nobody knows where you're at in your process and it wasn't documented, then they have no idea how to do your work and they can't actually help you out as a teammate. So make sure that you're communicating where you're at on your projects, you're documenting these things, you're putting a calendar out there. And we use a shared calendar for a lot of different things. For example, we have a shared calendar for our paid time off, so we know when employees are actually going to be out of the office. And that's easy for us to go look at and say, okay, who's off today? I'll know not to reach out to them or bother them or any of that. We also have like a pen test shared calendar. And I will tell this to my team all the time. If it is not on the calendar, I do not believe it to be true. I have gone and actually scheduled pen tests that were, because it looked like there was a slot open on the calendar, I scheduled that pen test out only to find out that, hey, I hadn't actually added that to the calendar yet. So make sure that you're using a shared calendar and you're keeping it up to date to let others know where you're at. But I use shared calendars for a lot of things. Status updates help, those sorts of things as well. Now, this is just more of the same what we talked about, but you should be establishing a routine. You should have a good daily schedule so your teammates know when you're available. You should have good communication. You should be self-motivated, especially in the field of cybersecurity. And I won't go on too much about this because we talked about a lot of it already. Now, these slides that are coming up are very, very, very important. Empathetic communication. You need to be able to realize that remote work is challenging and that it's very hard to know how somebody is doing from a mental health perspective if you can't see them, especially physically, every day. And you should be providing support and encouragement to your teammates. And these are just a couple examples of things that were sent to me specifically. Like, read these. Hey, I saw your message in general. It sounds like you've been struggling a bit with all the changes and things. I'm sorry to hear that. And if you need my help or simply want to vent, I'm here for you. You're doing an amazing job for what it's worth. What an amazing message to get. Yeah, I was absolutely having some mental health problems that day. And this person identified it, recognized it, and just said, hey, I'm here if you need to vent. I'm not going to push the situation anymore, but if you need to vent, I'm here. And just to let you know, you're actually doing an amazing job. Like, don't let this get you down. You're doing awesome work. That was a great message to receive, and it made me feel a lot better. Here's another one. Also, if you need any help writing up the report, let me know. I have most of the external already written, and I know you're very busy. This is a situation where Brad recognized that I was incredibly busy. I had an internal pen test that I was working on. He had already done the external and written his part of the report. He was done early, and he said, I've got free time. Let me help you out. That is an example of a good teammate. Recognizing when one teammate is overloaded, recognizing that you are underloaded and that you can actually take on some of your team's struggles and actually help balance that. Having this recognition, and it comes through communicating with your teammates and having that open transparency, very, very important. Remember, it's not just you, it's your team. And if you have free time and you can help somebody out, you are that much better of a teammate, and it will be greatly appreciated. And people will help you out in return when it is you who is overwhelmed. Not just that, but we talked about love languages earlier and how you can give good feedback and recognition. Here's just a couple of examples that are here. Like, Ange says, hey, I want to give a shout out to Lakith. We were having issues with the academy, and he actually went through troubleshooting steps and figured out the issue. This was actually a real issue we were having with Teachable. We were not getting great response from Teachable, so we ended up going and figuring out on our own. And hey, he solved us a ton of tickets and all kinds of issues we were having, all because he went and figured out what the error was all on his own. Awesome. Same thing with Evan here shouting out Ingi on our development team. He was the third person to commit code. He's built out this PJMT platform, which is going to be releasing here in just a couple days. And he's just doing a great job, even though he just started working here. And this is the public feedback that we give and this sort of recognition that we give. And it's very important to give that recognition because it does give us the warm and fuzzies. And it makes everybody kind of understand what you're working on, what you're doing, and that you're doing a great job. Here's an even better example, though, because this is direct communication, documentation, and praise. And this is, again, Ange from our support team. She's doing amazing, amazing work. She's the ideal citizen. And she says here, like, hey, a lot has happened last week. In order to standardize everything, keep everyone on the same page, we're going to send out some weekly updates. So that's talking about communication. A challenge is ensuring that everyone gets the same info. This is a spot I'll test out to see if we're capturing it this way. So please read the documentation and links within when you have time. So, hey, we're going to communicate this. We're going to communicate this weekly. Here's documentation that I've created so that you can actually review this. And also, here's some praise. Great work, everyone. He's already said it, but the team rallied exceptionally well over the last week and a half. Dan and Haseen are catching on very quickly. Major kudos to them as well. All around, this is fantastic. You are directly communicating, documenting, and offering praise to your team. There's not much better that you could do than this example. Let's briefly talk about being a better you in the community. Now, cybersecurity is a small world. If you are a jerk or an asshole or any of the above, it is going to come back to bite you. There are plenty of them in the field. Their names are well known to most of us. It does not take very long for your name to become well known. Just be a good person. Also, give back what you take. If you are the person asking questions repeatedly but never answering any, that's a problem. If you're asking a question, answer a question. And this comes down to the idea of, hey, someone always wants to be where you're at as well. A lot of us have this idea and this imposter syndrome that, well, I'm not far along to answer questions, but I'm far along enough to ask some. Well, okay, if you're very beginner, yeah, ask some questions, but I promise you, even if you just started studying, there's somebody below that. There's somebody that hasn't even started studying. They don't even know what to study. You can always help somebody out because there's always somebody who wants to be where you're at. Do not think that you are too new to help somebody out. And ultimately, just be a good person. It goes so far in this community. Give back, answer questions, just be overall a good person. Don't worry about what's in it for you. Worry about what you can do for the community, and that will pay its own dividends. Lastly, how to be a better you in general. Self-care is very, very important. Make sure that you're taking time for yourself. If you saw me throughout the years, if you go through my early videos to my more recent videos and everything in between, you'll see that, hey, I started out pretty skinny, gained a lot of weight, starting to get skinny again. And that was because I was not taking any time for myself. I was just focusing so much on work and not self-care. Prioritize your physical health and your mental health and make sure that you're taking time off. If you just studied for an exam and you studied for it for months, you just took the test and passed, don't just immediately go studying a new exam. Take a few days or a week off for yourself. If you're having a hard day at work, go take a 15-minute walk or 30-minute walk. What made a big difference for me was to take an hour every single day and just prioritize me. That could be working out or playing a video game or doing something, but I prioritized myself. And what I found out was taking that hour allowed me to actually hit the reset button and come back into work fully energized and ready to go again for the second half of my day. And I've become that much better and that much more efficient because of it. Now, professional development is very important. You see this last bullet, it says complacency can be a cybersecurity career killer. Yes, very, very true. If you are complacent and you're not studying, you're not professionally developing, well, you're going to get left behind because the world of cybersecurity is one of those that changes all the time. It's a cat and mouse game. A tool that works today might not work tomorrow. And because of that, it's easy to get left behind, but it's also easy to get burnt out. You want to make sure that you are focusing on professional development, that you're working on improving your skills, your knowledge, and you're working on getting better, not only from a technical standpoint, but you're being a better person, you're working with your community, those sorts of things. But also you want to balance that. You are always going to have this desire to want to know everything, but that you'll never know enough. And that leads to imposter syndrome as well. Make sure that you're not being complacent, but make sure that you're also taking time for yourself. Make sure that you're developing professionally and personally, but also make sure that you are working on your physical and mental health and balancing that carefully. Very, very important. With that being said, that is it for this talk and this keynote. Hopefully you found one piece of advice in here that was valuable for you. Hopefully you understand your worth a little bit better and you take from this something, one nugget of value that you can bring back to your life or your team or your company, and you go from there. Now, my name is Heath Adams, aka the Cyber Mentor. If you enjoyed this talk, please consider subscribing to the channel. Until next time, peace out.